Arbiter is here, and he is going to set the record straight on everything. He already has been. We haven't even started recording yet. Nothing is off limits here. This week, helping me tackle all the biggest headlines is royal commentator and one of my dear friends. I absolutely adore her, Victoria Arbiter, and former press secretary to the late Queen Elizabeth II. And I mean, working with King Charles III, he was Prince Charles at the time, but kind of a hefty resume, Dickie Arbiter. I'm so impressed that I get to speak to both of you today. And we had some breaking news that I have to ask Dickie about. And based on the look on his face, you know that I've teased him with this. Richard Eden at the Daily Mail is reporting that plans are being made for the USA to become the next associate member of the Commonwealth. Now, Eden says, although America declared independence from Britain in 1776, that wouldn't be a hindrance to it becoming the 57th member of the Commonwealth. The proposals were made by the Royal Commonwealth Society with the apparent backing of Queen Elizabeth during Trump's first term as president, but didn't come to fruition. Now the plans have been revived, with members of the society hopeful that the king will make the case to President Trump when he meets him. First of all, I'll start with Victoria. What is the Commonwealth to Americans? And then I want to ask Dickie what would be beneficial in America joining it. But Victoria, could you explain to America what the Commonwealth is?
The Commonwealth of Nations really is an extraordinary organization, a number of voluntary states, or membership is really through a voluntary method. And it is made up of a number of states around the world. Many of them were former UK colonies at the time of the empire. They wanted to join this Commonwealth of Nations. It's an opportunity for leaders to come together and share ideas, to be friends. Now, it has been criticised over the years because there are several countries that still commit acts that are not within the ethos of the Commonwealth. But really, the late Queen used to call it a family of nations. And there was one time she actually was talking about it, and she said it's like when you get a dysfunctional family together and people sort of argue and squabble, but actually there's a deep affection for it. So she was the leader of the Commonwealth throughout her time on the throne. It's not something that should have automatically passed to the king, but before she died, the member nations did all say that they would like him to take over as and when she passed. And so I think, not to speak for her, but certainly she would have said it was one of her proudest achievements, the ongoing success of the organization.
Let's talk about something no one saw coming: the United States potentially joining the Commonwealth. Yes, you heard that right. According to a new report from the Daily Mail, discussions are underway for the USA to become the 57th member of the Commonwealth of Nations. And get this, Queen Elizabeth herself apparently supported the idea during Donald Trump's first term. But for some reason it never happened, until now.
That's so wonderful. All right, Dickie, talk to me about, first of all, wasn't Meghan supposed to have something to do with the Commonwealth? And also, what would be the benefit of the United States joining the Commonwealth? What is your thought? What are your thoughts on this story? Because I was surprised by it.
Well, let me go to that one first. President Trump has made a bid for Canada, wanting it to be the 51st state of the United States. Canada have told him, Mark Carney, the new prime minister, has virtually told him to push off. So if he can't have Canada, he wants the other 56 countries that are members of the Commonwealth, but he can't have them. Simple as that. And most of the Commonwealth countries don't particularly like America, even less so with President Trump in the White House. But you say about Meghan, wasn't she something? In a sense, yes, because the late Queen offered Harry and Meghan the Commonwealth Youth Trust, president and vice president. Mrs. Sussex was the vice president. She wasn't president. And when they decided to shut up shop in terms of the royal family and push off first to Canada and ultimately to California, they lost that. They lost everything else. So they had the opportunity of doing something very worthwhile as far as Commonwealth use is concerned, but they turned their backs on it.
So disappointing. What a missed opportunity, really. Let me talk to you about King Charles, who seems to be doing really well lately. It's so nice to see him out and about. He's got a glow to him and a perpetual smile across his face. He is expected to visit the Vatican, and he's expected to go on a pretty, I think, eventful royal engagement. Talk to me about what this will entail, Dickie. What does this mean in the States?
Well, it is a state visit and it's not expected to. He will from the 7th to the 10th of April. The idea of a state visit is whether it's he is visiting or he is playing host in the United Kingdom. It's about the British government schmoozing because they want to do business with that country. So the king, who is a past master at soft diplomacy, goes there and smooths the feathers of the host country. President Mattarella, he'll be meeting in Italy. He'll be meeting Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. And it's sort of paving the way for British government to come with bits of paper to sign on the dotted line to do trade. So they are worthwhile. It's not a royal putting their hand up and saying, I want to go to such and such country. They are going on behalf of UK Inc., on behalf of the government to pave the way for better trade relations, because that's what governments do and that's what countries do. So, yeah, he is expected, and I use this word loosely, to meet with the Pope. The Pope is currently in hospital, and I doubt whether he will go to the hospital to see the Pope. So whether the Pope actually returns to the Vatican is an open question. He certainly will meet the president of Italy, certainly will meet the prime minister of Italy. He will go to what the Italians call the wedding cake. It's the altar of the fatherland. It's a memorial to King Emmanuel II, who united Italy and was the first leader. And he'll lay a wreath there. Basically, it's their tomb of the unknown warrior. And he'll do a few other things there, as will Queen Camilla. So these state visits are very important, whether they happen as visitors or whether they're as hosts of incoming visitor coming to the United Kingdom.
For those who don't know, the Commonwealth is a voluntary alliance of nations, many of which were former British colonies. It's been described as a family of nations, but here's the kicker. The USA was never part of the British Commonwealth after gaining independence in 1776. So why now? And what's really behind this move? Now here's where it gets really interesting. Trump's name is being thrown into the mix. If he wins the 2024 election, reports suggest that King Charles could discuss this proposal directly with him. Imagine that, America and the British monarchy working together in a formal alliance. Talk about history coming full circle.
Victoria, can you walk me through the process of determining who represents the government when it comes to a state visit? Is there a meeting of the minds that happens that says we really feel like Prince William and Catherine would be a strength here, or is it this is a really important trip, so we have to send the king and the queen? Do you know what that template is like when they determine these things?
Well, there'll certainly be a number of different factors that are thought about. Really, it comes down to scheduling, who's available, who has a personal connection, who would be most beneficial in this instance. But I think what is particularly striking about this visit, and I think why it's wonderful that the King and Queen are going, this is going to overlap with their 20th wedding anniversary. And back in 2005, the King and the Queen actually had to postpone their wedding by a day because the King, on April 8th, 2005, had to attend the funeral of Pope John Paul II. On April 8th this year, hopefully, all being well, he will be meeting with Pope Francis and celebrating the 2025 Jubilee. This is a very special year for the Catholic Church. It's an occasion that is celebrated every 25 years. The late Queen attended in 2000. It's a time for reconciliation, for prayer, for pilgrimage, and really for a king who has worked very hard to promote interfaith dialogue, for somebody who has really sought to have interfaith tolerance. I think this is going to be a very poignant visit. Remember, we have two divorcees that were allowed to remarry. They're now going to the Catholic Church, and they're going to be celebrating this very special year. But also, not to go on, but I think because of the late Queen's long legacy, she set so many records and achieved so many firsts during her reign, and she's left very few firsts for the King to accomplish. But actually, during this visit, he is going to be, first of all, the first British monarch in history to to address the joint session of the Italian Parliament. Only 4 other foreign leaders have had such an opportunity. But also, he's going to be the first monarch since the Reformation, which was the formal separation of Britain from Rome in 1534 under the reign of Henry VIII, to visit the papal basilica of St. Paul outside the walls, which is where the Apostle St. Paul is said to be buried. So I think for the king, that's going to be a very poignant moment. So it's an opportunity, yes, to go and show his support for such a big occasion, being the Jubilee, but also to promote those interfaith dialogues, which I think matter so much to him.
Can I add a postscript there, Kinsey? You mentioned about choosing a royal to go on a state visit. Only a head of state can make a state visit. The other royals go on an official visit. When it's a state visit, it adds clout to the visit in terms of government relations between the two countries. So you send the head of state rather than another royal. Yeah, William and Catherine would do a terrific job, but it wouldn't have the same cachet as a state visit.
It's interesting, though, because when we see the headlines surrounding Prince William sitting down with President Trump, everybody loses their mind over it. It almost has a bigger effect. I don't know if that's a positive or negative. All of the headlines were positive, but it was interesting to see the way that everyone covered that meeting and how fond the president was of Prince William. Can I ask, and if you don't know the answer, that's fine, but I feel like King Charles has always been a spiritual person. And, seeing that he would hope to sit down with the Pope does not surprise me, because especially with the Pope being ill recently, the king has such a kind heart. Is there any indication that this cancer journey has shaken him in a way, brought him closer to religion in any form or fashion, or enhanced his spirituality? Does anyone, either one of you, if you have any sort of insight on that, I'd be curious to know.
Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Meghan Markle. If the USA had joined the Commonwealth years ago, Meghan, an American duchess, could have played a major role in strengthening US Commonwealth relations. This could have been her big moment, her chance to become a global leader within the royal family. But instead, she and Harry walked away. Think about it. This could have been Meghan's legacy. Imagine Meghan leading initiatives between the USA and the Commonwealth, championing causes on a global scale, and being an actual power player instead of just launching failed Netflix deals. But nope, she gave it all up, and now she's on the outside looking in.
Well, I'm sure Victoria has something to say, but from my standpoint, having worked with him for 5 years, he's always been a very spiritual person. It's interesting, the difference between father and son. Mm-hmm. Father is very religious and he's very spiritual, whereas William isn't. And what happens when he comes to the throne? He is automatically, when he becomes king, the supreme governor of the Church of England. Will he take a greater interest? That's a big question mark for the future. But for now, yes, the king is a very spiritual person, and he's not blinkered. It's not just Church of England, it's other religions as well, because he wants to see them all come together, dialogue. It is one thing that he is passionate about, that people talk to each other, they don't fight each other.
Victoria?
I could only really speculate, Kinsey, but certainly he's shown a deep spirituality and faith throughout his life. He took time to learn the Quran. He has tried to bring interfaith leaders together. His coronation, he brought multi-faith leaders together. And I think that's very powerful, because it's only in educating everybody about different religions that we can learn tolerance and lose those prejudices. I think a lot of people who have been diagnosed with life-threatening diseases do have their own particular journey, and a number of people have said that it has made them embrace their faith even more. Certainly the late Queen embraced her faith even more, and she was a devoutly religious woman. And I think there can be a lot of comfort for people to embrace that spirituality when they're faced with something so challenging. So yes, I think that's a very valid point that you made, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if it has had a profound effect on him.
Well, God backwards is dog. So I'm going to move. I'm going to move
Great segue.
The conversation a little bit forward, and I'm just so guilty. I have 4 sleeping dogs around us right now. I love dogs, so to read the headlines about King Charles smitten with his new puppy, the first he's had in decades, of course that was a headline that I couldn't click on fast enough. Now this is a curly-haired pup named Snuff. That's a children's book that's just waiting to be written. I thought that was the cutest description of this dog. And it also comes around the same time that Queen Camilla rescued a dog named Molly, who apparently looks like a mole. And I think if you're somebody that has been devastated over the diagnosis of cancer and praying for these people and watching their progress, the idea that they would feel comfortable bringing some new life into the family gives you a lot of confidence as to what's going on at home, that things are looking up and they are feeling good enough to take on this new responsibility. Now, I have kind of a nasty question, Dickie. This is a rude question, but I believe that I read years ago that Prince Charles had a dog he loved that Princess Diana made him get rid of. Is that true?
Well, it's alleged. I mean, various people have written about it, and a number of people have talked about it. Harvey was a Labrador. Labradors do smell a bit because they love going into water. They're hunting dogs. They're water dogs. So they go into water and they do smell. And yes, probably did. But interesting, you raised the subject about dogs, and everybody's talking about Tigger, who died of old age, or aged 18. He also had another Jack Russell that got lost at Balmoral in about 1994, 95. That was called Pooh, after Winnie the Pooh. And the general belief is because Jack Russells are rat catchers and rabbit counters and fox hunters, he got down a hole and got stuck down there and couldn't get out. That's the general feeling. They never found it. But that's the general feeling because that's what Jack Russells do. But the fact that he's got this dog, this Lagotto Romagnolo.
And let's be honest, if Meghan and Harry had stayed in the royal family, they would have had front row seats to one of the most historic diplomatic moves of the century. But instead, while King Charles and world leaders make real decisions, Meghan is busy posting banana split recipes on Instagram. Talk about a missed opportunity. Now the big question, would Americans even want this? Let's be real, the USA is a superpower. It doesn't exactly need the Commonwealth. So why would this be beneficial? Well, here's the thing. The Commonwealth is a powerful economic network representing 2.5 billion people across 56 countries. A U.S. Commonwealth partnership could open new trade agreements, security collaborations, and diplomatic ties that Washington might find very useful. But will the American public buy into it?
Which,
thank you for saying that, because I wasn't about to.
At first glance, people would say, oh, that's a poodle, standard poodle. No, it's not a standard poodle. It's a dog that sort of comes from eastern districts of Italy. It was a water dog. Here we got another water dog, but now it's very good at truffles. The king loves wild mushrooms. Now, truffle is not a mushroom because it goes underground, whereas a mushroom's on top. But I think he'll be very satisfied that once the dog is adult, that it'll hunt out truffles, and he'll be very pleased with it.
That is
well,
so
on
smart.
that note, sorry, Kinsey, not to cut you off, but where I would love to be a fly on the wall. So back in 2006, Prince Philip decided to challenge himself to become one of the first people to raise successfully truffles in the UK. And so he planted like 300 oak saplings with truffle spores at Sandringham. And lots of people were poo-pooing this idea. And in 2018, sure enough, he became the very first person in the UK to successfully raise truffles. It took 12 fruitless years, but he achieved it. So I just love the image of King Charles going off with his truffle hunting dog and foraging for mushrooms on the Sandringham estate. Because going back to sort of this busy schedule that he keeps, you need a way to unwind. And these particular dogs really love an active lifestyle. They love being out in the countryside, and that's what the king loves. And so I think we were talking about spirituality before. That's another form of spirituality, just being out in nature with your dog that loves you completely unconditionally, foraging for mushrooms. I think they're going to make a perfect pair.
Oh, so sweet. That is such a cute visual. And that's a reality show I would watch. The first the first truffles in the UK. Dickie, can you talk to me about Prince William's visit to Estonia, this Estonia-Russia border, and the significance of it right now? And I think my real question or concern is Prince William putting himself in danger when it comes to a visit like this?
No, he's not putting himself in danger because the government certainly wouldn't let him go if there was any thought of danger. He's going there primarily as colonel of the Mercian regiment, of which he is colonel of. They're there, not quite in a peacekeeping, but they're there on maneuvers, and they're not a lot of them there, but the regiment is there. And he's doing other things on behalf of the government. So again, it's a bit of schmoozing. It's a bit of, yeah, we're on your side. We're watching your back sort of thing. And this again is soft diplomacy practiced by the royal family, which is very good for the royals. It's very good for the government, very good for the country, and very good for the host country.
Victoria, BBC says that the Prince of Wales is showing support for UK troops guarding NATO's border with Russia. Am I silly to ask how that's not political, or has only America really politicized this?
Let's not forget, a lot of younger Americans see the monarchy as an outdated institution. Would they really support aligning with an organization that still has royal ties? Or would they see this as a step backward? That's a question the White House would have to think about. So what happens next? Right now, this is just a proposal, but the fact that it's back on the table suggests serious discussions are happening behind the scenes. If Trump wins in 2024 and King Charles brings this up, this could actually happen. The real question is, would President Biden or Trump actually entertain this idea? And if so, what does this mean for US-UK relations in the future? We're talking about a move that could reshape global diplomacy as we know it.
It's a very fine balance, Kinsey, and you're right to be thinking along those lines. And this is where Prince William obviously has to be careful about what he says and what he does. His presence alone does speak volumes, but I think this visit is kind of threefold. On the one hand, he is there to reassure Estonia of the support of their allies. Estonia shares a border with Russia. It's a population of only 1.3 million people, and so the threat of Russia really does loom very large, particularly right now where Russia's next steps are uncertain. So he's there to reassure Estonia. He's also there to champion the British troops, which are about 80 miles from the Russian border. He's there in some respects. It'll be a morale boosting trip for them too, because there's nothing like your colonel-in-chief coming to pay attention to what it is that you're doing. But I also think this is a way that he's reaffirming the commitment of the UK to Ukraine. He is there on behalf of the British government at the request of the Foreign Office. So yes, there is a lot of public messaging that is going on, but he is just then very careful in terms of what he says. The visit initially, he did meet with the Estonian president. He then went on and fulfilled initiatives that are important to him while also supporting Ukraine. Of course, mental health. He went to a school that was established to support and educate teenage refugees from Ukraine. While he was there, a few of the students gave him a friendship bracelet in the Ukrainian colors, which he said Charlotte was likely to poach when he got home. He played basketball with students. And then it was on to issues affecting the environment. He met up with clean startup businesses. But then it's all about Friday's initiative is really all about paying attention to the troops and highlighting exactly what it is that they're doing. But I think Prince William has a very good handle on what it is that's expected, and he's able to walk that fine line.
Excellent. Did you have anything to add, Dickie?
No, I think Victoria's wrapped it up completely.
Yeah, she's a smart cookie. I think she might have some pretty solid upbringing. So Dickie, let's talk about the Al Capone's vault of this week. Aside from the JFK papers, was probably Prince Harry's visa application that was released, which was just page after page of just
that was a waste of time, wasn't it?
Barcodes. Yeah, exactly. Now, I have heard that the Heritage Foundation has filed a second lawsuit to continue to fight this, that they are insisting that they are going to get answers as to whether or not Prince Harry lied on his visa application. they are ruthless and relentless when it comes to this. They say that it's to prove they want to prove a bigger problem, their claims, when it comes to the Biden administration and immigration. Talk to me about, is this having any effect on Prince Harry, do you believe? Do you think that he is confident and knows that no matter what, the government's going to protect him? Or do you think that this could be of any concern to him? Donald Trump's already said, I'm not going to deport him, but others close to Trump have said, but that doesn't mean he won't step in if there's reason to prosecute.
Well, I'm not going to read Harry's mind.
That is a good call. Yeah.
he seems reasonably happy in California, although it was a bit of a trial by ordeal, having to stand there in the background at the end of Meghan's 6-hour ordeal or 4-hour ordeal, where he didn't contribute anything. He was just there as a body. The Heritage Foundation are not letting go. They're a bit like a Rottweiler. They've got their teeth into it. They spent years trying to get the Department of Homeland Security to release the papers. What do they release? They release redacted pages after redacted pages. So are they going to continue trying? Is the president going to step in? Well, he's already said he's not going to step in. He said that Harry's got enough problems with his wife without the immigration papers. They're going to carry on. They're not going to let go. They seem to have lots of money behind them too, because all this costs money. Whether the judges are going to relent, who knows? The justice system seems to be, a bit topsy-turvy at the moment. You get one side agreeing, another side not agreeing. Will the president, as I said a moment ago, intervene? I don't think so. He's got enough problems of his own. So it'll just be more of the same over the coming months, even years, before there's any release of further papers. And what is there to release? Did Harry fill out? Was he honest with his with the answers to his immigration application? We don't know. Will we ever know? I don't think so.
And for the royal family, this would be huge. If King Charles actually brought America into the fold, he'd be securing his legacy as a monarch who expanded the Commonwealth beyond anything Queen Elizabeth ever did. So here's the final takeaway. This is a massive opportunity for King Charles, the royal family, and global diplomacy. If it happens, it could mean a new era of US-UK relations. But for Meghan, it's just another reminder of what she could have had if she hadn't walked away. While world leaders discuss the future, Meghan is nowhere in the conversation. And if the US really does join the Commonwealth, she'll be watching from the sidelines, as a former duchess who gave up her biggest chance to make history.
Victoria, when it comes to a royal writing a book and putting so much raw information in there that, examples, basically his drug use that inevitably got him in trouble. Do you think royals 20 years from now, 30, 40 years from now, are going to look back on this instance and say, I have to tread carefully because I can't, there are consequences to your actions, no matter how creative or innocent he felt in the moment when he was giving away this highly sensitive information. Inevitably, it bit him in the butt and created some complications.
You like to think people learn from past mistakes, but they rarely do. History has a habit of repeating itself. And when Harry and Meghan did their Oprah interview in 21, I said, these have a habit of backfiring. Diana in 95, her panorama, King Charles in 94 when he spoke. Prince Andrew, he is a walking billboard for don't do any interviews, isn't he? Because of what happened with Newsnight. So everybody is going to walk their own path. But I think what is challenging here in terms of how to proceed, I do understand and I do respect the desire to hold the powerful to account, because let's face it, if you're rich and famous and know helpful people, then you're going to get away with way more than you or I would. But Mick Jagger was convicted of drug possession in 1967. He's had very successful times in the US. Paul McCartney, Ed Sheeran, there are other people that have admitted to drug use. Is it fair that there's one rule for them and another for us? No, of course it isn't. But at the same time, the Heritage Foundation could end up spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't think anything is ever going to come out. And so this just feels at this point, just nip it in the bud and move on. I appreciate, no, it's not fair. And I do think we should know if Harry was given any special favors. According to these documents, they say he wasn't given any special favors. We've just got to accept that and move on. I don't think any other information is going to come to light. I think they're just trying to use Harry as an example, but let's face it, there's going to be other celebrities that are able to tour, live, work in the US without any pushback. It's just the
and
way
quite
it is.
frankly, in terms of his immigration papers, it was well documented that he had indulged in drugs. His father took him to a rehab center to see actually what happens. It's been so documented in newspapers, in magazines. He's done it in his book. He would have been very stupid not to have put it into his immigration papers. And I would be surprised if he hadn't done it, because you can't hide behind a lie. But as Victoria said, and I said a moment ago, I doubt whether we'll actually see the full application. But, Heritage Foundation, move on. I'm sure there are other things you could get involved in.
And they are. Let me just tell you, they are. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to both of you. I'm very excited to see the King and hopefully the Pope together. Dickie, do you think that's something we'd actually get a glimpse of, or would that be a private meeting that we?
No. It will be there. It will be filmed. It will be photographed. There won't be hordes of people in there, but we will actually see it if indeed it happens. If the Pope is actually out of hospital, and a lot does depend on his medical condition. I hope. And I think everybody hopes and prays that he is okay and that he can return to the Vatican on his feet rather than lying in a bed. But we just have to wait and see. The 7th to the 10th of April, it's still a good couple of weeks away. So anything can happen in that time.
All right, folks, that's it for today's reaction. If you enjoyed this breakdown, hit that like button, subscribe for more in-depth commentary, and drop a comment below. Should the USA really join the Commonwealth? Or is this idea doomed from the start? Let's discuss.